Garrison Day program. My name is Jen Turner, and I am the Executive Director of the Robbins House. I'm thrilled to welcome you here today to a program that honors a woman with both local and national significance. Why should we celebrate Ellen Garrison? Well, I'm lucky that my job allows me to spend most of my days thinking about members of the Robbins and Garrison families. And in these times, I think of how fundamentally American Ellen Garrison's story it truly is. Members of her family, such as her grandfather Caesar Robbins and her father Jack Garrison, knew the horrors of enslavement firsthand. Yet within one generation, her family went from enslavement to owning land and property out in the great field, living in a neighborhood of other marginalized Concordians, where members of the Robbins and Garrison families grew rye and cranberries to support themselves. Caesar Robbins was also a veteran of the American Revolution and served in campaigns that included Ticonderoga and Dorchester Heights, as well as the North Bridge on April 19th. He and other patriots of color helped create a new nation and gave their descendants opportunities to fight for freedom through the anti-slavery and abolitionist movements of the 19th century. The Robbins House is incredibly proud of the fact that 3 years ago, at the first Ellen Garrison Day, became the first official 250th celebration in Concord. Born in 1823, Ellen Garrison was educated in the Concord Public Schools and was considered a student of superior learning. She became a teacher, and for almost 20 years, between 1865 and the 1880s, she taught hundreds of students, the majority of whom were newly freed from enslavement, in places like Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, and Kansas. During that time, Ellen Garrison became one of the first African Americans in the country to challenge segregation laws when she and a fellow teacher tried to desegregate a ladies' waiting room at a Baltimore train station in the spring of 1866. At the risk of potential severe bodily harm, she acted on a deeply held belief that American society should live up to and strive for equality for all people. She once wrote, "Judge us by our words and actions as we fight for rights and justice wherever we can." Her story and her legacy reveal to us the importance of remaining true to those values of equality and justice today in a democratic society under peril. Now, before we begin, I also wanted to thank the pastor and congregation of TriCon Church for welcoming us into the sanctuary tonight. It is wonderful to be hosting an Ellen Garrison event in a space that was deeply meaningful to her and her family. You all know that being the history nerd that I am, I'm about to share a little Ellen trivia. In 1828, Susan Garrison, Ellen's mother, transferred her membership from the African Baptist Church on Beacon Hill to the Trinitarian Church here in Concord, TriCon. One of the reasons for transferring her membership may have been to provide a Sabbath school education for her children. The Concord Sabbath School Society record book survives for the years 1828 to 1837, and towards the end of that volume is a list of scholars enrolled in 1828. Among the student scholars listed are the surviving Garrison children, Susan, 15, William, 11, John, 10, and Ellen, 5. When applying to the American Missionary Association in March of 1865 to become a school teacher for newly freed African Americans in the South, Ellen stressed that she had enjoyed a good common school and Sabbath school education. In total, the Trinitarian Church enrolled 7 children of color in their Sunday school, which is a remarkable occurrence for a church that clearly wasn't engaged in simply token integration, but was manifesting its continued commitment to anti-slavery activism in the community. We are standing on the site, although not the original building, of the Trinitarian Congregational Church. The original 19th century building was burned down by an arsonist in 1924. That's a story for another day. But as we start our musical selections, imagine a time in the not-so-distant past when a small Ellen Garrison, don't we always envision her as an adult, sat in similar spaces to where we are today and reflect on what she did in her remarkable life. So unfortunately, neither Maria Madison or Liz Clayton, the two individuals we wanted to honor tonight, could be with us, but we're going to talk about them anyways. So over 15 years ago, the community came together to save a house that was historically significant to the story of Concord in the 19th century. Several community members gathered together, organized and saved what would become the Robbins House from demolition and moved it on a flatbed truck from Bedford Street to its current location at 320 Monument Street, now tucked into the back of the parking lot at Minuteman National Park. The townspeople of Concord provided 2 Community Preservation Act grants to restore the home to its current appearance as an early 19th century home of 2 prominent black families in Concord, the Robbins and the Garrisons. Now last year, at our last Ellen Garrison Day event, we honored Veronica Jones, the president of the Altadena Historical Society, for her work in sharing Ellen's story, particularly her time in California, at the end of her life. But this year, we would like to honor 2 individuals a bit closer to home. When I became the executive director of the Robbins House 2 years ago, I had no idea how large the shoes I would be attempting to fill had been. On the other hand, Nikki knew, and she signed on anyway. Now, Maria Madison is the founder and first president of the board of the Robbins House, and Liz Clayton is also a founder and the first clerk, as well as eventually becoming vice president of the board. And they're truly the epitome of the adage, we will lift as we climb. The impetus of the Robbins House started long before the museum existed. Maria and Liz both served on a subcommittee of the HRC to research and establish a Black heritage and history trail in Concord, in order, as Polly Atwood recently recollected to me, to return the history of Concord to more than just those dead white men. Now, I love that line, but on a serious note, their efforts were designed to provide representation and make the town more comfortable for Concord students of color, and to make it easier for them to belong in such a white environment. That work continues to guide those of us working in the Robbins House today. When the Robbins House was about to be demolished, Maria and Liz spearheaded the efforts to save the house. It took months of fundraising, raising awareness of the situation, collaborating with town leaders and others, then literally figuring out how to move the house down Bedford Street on a flatbed truck while watching for power lines. Liz and Maria oversaw the whole project, from research to paint analysis, archaeology surveys, landscape work, and house movers. The 2 of them did it all together, and the Robbins House was turned into the beloved local institution that it is today. They never wavered in their vision of what the Robbins House could be, and their leadership and the legacy they helped create are an inspiration to both Nikki and me today. Without them, the stories of the Robbins House would be another forgotten history taken by time and modernization. And I also wanted to mention that Liz's encyclopedic knowledge of Ellen Garrison will be sorely missed. She continues to tell me there'll always be email, but she was instrumental in the early research into Ellen, her time in Kansas, and she and Maria were the leading lights in establishing our wonderful collaborative relationship with our museum sister institution, the Altadena Historical Society, as we work together to expand Ellen's story and legacy on both coasts of the country. Without the 2 of them, the Robbins House wouldn't be here, and Ellen Garrison's story would not be known. And so from the bottom of our hearts, we thank them for the tremendous legacy they have given to this community. And we'd now like to hand it off to Mr. Nossi and the Concord Carlisle High School Orchestra, who have graced us with their presence tonight and have agreed to play several songs. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. It's very odd to talk to the backs of all of you. So I'm going to be very brief. We are so thrilled to be here and share this program with you all. I'm actually going to hand things over to our orchestra president, Grady Flynn, who's going to give us a bit more perspective on the program we're presenting this evening. Grady.
Hi, everyone. Our next piece is by Boston Symphony Orchestra inaugural composer chair, Carlos Simon. I'd like to share a quote from Richard Wright, which inspired this piece of music. "I was leaving the South to fling myself into the unknown. I was taking a part of the South to transplant an alien soil, to see if it could grow differently, if it could drink of new and cool rains, bend in strange winds, respond to the warmth of other suns, and perhaps to bloom." Indeed, this piece is called Warmth of Other Suns, based off of Isabel Wilkerson's book of the same title. This piece seeks to tell this story of the approximately 6 million Black Americans who transplanted to the urban West, Midwest, and Northeast during the Great Migration in a quest to self-liberate from the oppression of Southern Jim Crow laws and racial violence and pursue educational and economic opportunities. According to Simon, the work expresses the terrifying duality of wanting to find rest, yet never being able to call a place home. And if this entire piece reflects an uncertain yet steadfast journey toward a better future, this third and final movement, which we're about to play for you, called Settle, captures the tail end of this migration, time after arrival, which brings a final pride, rest, and comfort, but also an edge of sustained vigilance in an unresolved fight for freedom. And I think that this piece is particularly reminiscent of Ellen Garrison's journey, because hers was not exactly like that. She did not follow the Great Migration, but she followed a similar pattern of an impetus to move, and then eventually a sort of rest, an unfinished fight. Because for her, it wasn't the need to leave and find better economic opportunity, but it was this desire to continue to help others, to find their peace themselves in economic opportunities as well. So this is Settle by Carlos Simon. Ellen Garrison said in one of her letters that her act of civil disobedience in that Maryland train station was not to benefit her as an individual, but to create a standpoint for others. And that wish certainly came true. She could have chosen to live a settled life in Concord, and yet she chose to go on that journey for herself and to help other people. Her test of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was a brave step in the long battle for civil rights. A little before, Rosa Parks took a similar heroic leap in Montgomery. After another 100 years of that fight, the composer of our next piece, the remarkable yet underperformed William Grant Still, was also breaking barriers. Among so many other firsts, he was the first Black American composer whose music was performed by a major orchestra, the first Black American composer to conduct a major orchestra in the Deep South, and the first Black composer to conduct a major American orchestra in his own music. This is Danzas de Panama, Panamanian dances, and it's a series of dances, some of which are indigenous to Panama, some of which are inspired by music from other places, and we know for certain that this piece is of African origin, and it is thought to have been brought by the first slaves imported to Panama. And so this is the fourth movement that we're about to play for you, called Cumbia y Congo, and those are both dances, so please feel free to dance along.
Ellen left Concord in 1841 and settled in Boston, where she was married and widowed. This is also the period of time where she most likely started her teaching career, but we do not have a source material on what her career looked like. We do know that in the middle of the Civil War, she decided to become a teacher in the South to newly freed slaves. She sent an application to the American Missionary Association in 1863. Sir, I have a great desire to go and labor among the freedmen of the South. I think it is our duty as a people to spend our lives in trying to elevate our own race. Who can feel for us if we do not feel for ourselves? And who can feel the sympathy that who are identified with them? I should like to go as soon as possible, for I feel as though there is much work to be done, and I would like to do my share. I would have gone upon my own responsibility, but I am not able, and the time is being so unsettled, I thought it would be safe for me to be employed by some society. Then I shall not be troubled about my livelihood, for it cramps one's energies to have to think about the means of living. I suppose I must tell you something of myself. I teach the common English branches: reading, writing, arithmetic, geography, and grammar. Should there be an opportunity for me to be employed, will you please to inform me what the salary will be with all the particulars? I shall be ready to leave Newport as soon as I can settle my present business. I've selected school, but I believe I can do more among the freedmen. Please to write me if there is any prospect, and you will much oblige me. Yours most respectfully, E. Garrison Jackson. P.S. I was born in Concord, Massachusetts, and I am a member of the Baptist Church in Joy, St. Boston. And now we have students from the Concord Middle School in the Ellen Garrison building.
Good evening. My name is Justin Cameron. I'm the principal of the Ellen Garrison building at Concord Middle School. And we have this evening 8 student leaders of a bias prevention program called the Playbook Initiative. They're 8 of 110 student leaders of social justice at the Ellen Garrison building at Concord Middle School. I am reading Life as a Teacher. Sir, I send the report of my labors this past month. The chief obstacles which I have to encounter is the inconvenience of the schoolroom. It has nothing convenient about it. No desks on which the scholars can write, no desk for me to keep my books in, and only one seat with a back. And these are all borrowed. The want of convenient seats and desks is a serious obstacle, for there are several who can write, and there are several who ought to be learning. I have done all I can to get them at the desks, but it seems they have not been able to get them yet. My scholars are very good generally. Sometimes I have to deprive them of recess. See what I did there? Or to keep them after when the others are dismissed, but have no serious cases yet. They listen to me and they obey. One certain is my scholars like me, and therefore they regard what I tell them. My methods of punishment are various. Sometimes I have them stand up until they are pretty tired, and then I have a bench in which I call the bad boy seat. And sometimes I have to rap their knuckles, but I think they are good. They are easily governed. There is one thing which I should say, and that is the people here are generally free. They do not act as freemen. They are not like the northern free people. They are not yet accustomed to free laws and free speech and freedom, but they are anxious to learn and hope to go to school when work is not so brisk and it is as it is now. Hoping that my report will prove satisfactory, I remain yours truly, E. Garrison Jackson.
Ellen Garrison to Jackson Hunt, 11th April 1866, Port Deposit, Maryland, Amistad Collection, Tulane University. Reverend S. Hunt, enclosed I send my monthly report for March. I hope it will be satisfactory. I have been enabled to make some little progress in the past month. My scholars have been diligent and attentive and have improved with time.
Many of them have left us at the end of the month to engage in various pursuits of life. I saw them depart with regret. Although our acquaintance has been very short, yet we have become attached to each other, and we parted reluctantly.
It is a mistaken idea the people have here that they must take their children away after a few weeks teaching and send them out to work. I have not been able to induce but one man to continue to send his son in spite of work. And he is so small he could do but little.
Work, work, work is their motto, while mine is educate, educate, educate. Yours truly, E.G. Jackson. In 1866, the Civil Rights Act was passed. The law made it illegal for African Americans to be discriminated against in places of public accommodation, such as trains or train stations. Ellen Garrison and a fellow teacher named Mary Anderson tested the Civil Rights Act in 1866 when they purposely took a seat in a segregated train station waiting room in Baltimore, Maryland.
Rev. S. Hunt, dear friend, this is the first time that I've felt it to be my duty to make any serious complaint, but an outrage has just occurred, which demands attention. It was nothing less than the forcible ejection of myself and Miss Anderson from the ladies' sitting room at the depot of the Philadelphia-Baltimore-Washington Railroad in the city of Baltimore.
We made our way to the depot to take the 6 o'clock train for Havre de Grace. We arrived at the depot a few minutes before 6 o'clock and took our seats in the ladies' room from which we were thrown out. We were injured in our persons as well as our feelings, for it was with no gentle hand that we were assisted from that room, and I feel the effects of it still.
I made up my mind to make a complaint to the superintendent of Freeman's Bureau, General Sanders, whose headquarters are at Baltimore. I did so in person. He said that it ought to be attended to. The general also told me that he would do all in his power.
He also says he wishes to ascertain whether respectable people have rights which are to be respected. Thus, you see, it will be a question of much importance. It will not benefit us merely as such, but it will be a stand for others. I feel anxious to have your opinion. Just at this time, it appears to me a question of much importance. It is different from the past. We can now give evidence. Yours truly, E. Garrison Jackson. Ellen Garrison went back the next day to gather witness testimony at the train station and the ladies' waiting room.
General G. Stoddard. Sir, I have the pleasure of informing you that I have been successful in ascertaining the name of witness Wiz David Gould, who resides at 57 Mulberry Street. On leaving your office yesterday afternoon, we went directly to the depot. We arrived there about 10 minutes before 4 o'clock. Mr. Cornish asked me if I was going inside. I answered yes. I could not stand out here. We were in the street. We passed into the depot and I made my way to the ladies' room. I took my station near the table by the door. I had just had time to take a glance at the occupants of the room when the female in charge came up to me and ordered me to leave the room, which of course I did not heed. As I considered that I was in the right place, she ordered me out several times and asked me if I was deaf, if I could not hear, and told me if I would not go, she would get someone to put me out. She then left the room, as I supposed, to put her threat into execution. Meantime, I stood waiting as patiently and silently as possible for her reinforcements to arrive, but I waited in vain. They did not come when she called, and I remained until it was time for me to take the cars. I did not know, but these facts might be of use, as I was the only one whom she addressed in that insulting manner while I was in the room. Therefore, she did not treat me as she did the others present. I feel as though I ought to strive to maintain my rights. As long as our friends have passed a law for our protection, we ought to contend for our rights and let our friends see that we appreciate their efforts in our behalf. Hoping that I have not wearied your patience, I remain yours, most respectfully, Miss E. Garrison Jackson. Ellen Garrison eventually sued in the Maryland State court system. While her case was eventually thrown out, her case was one of the first court cases in the United States to challenge segregation laws, and it attracted a lot of interest and time, particularly amongst the Black community in Baltimore. Ellen's lawsuit and what it means. Ellen G. Jackson sued S. Hutt, 21st of May, 1866, Baltimore, Maryland. We went to Baltimore on Friday evening and presented ourselves at court on Saturday morning as requested. This case was not called. Our opponent's counsel consulted with ours and requested a compromise, which proposition, being unexpected by us, required consideration. We could not agree to compromise. The fact in the case must be very much against them, or they would not want it disposed of in any way. The colored people of Baltimore came to our aid in very unexpected manner. They said they would assist us with their money to continue the case, and by no means give in, but test it, and find out whether we have civil rights or not. They said it concerned them all, and we have pledged ourselves to go through. Our case is a good one to decide the question, for we did not resist in any way, then by retaining our seats. We did not once lose sight of our position, but maintained our dignity. In fact, I did not speak to the woman who first insulted us, and did not speak to Adam Smizer until he grasped my arm tightly, that I felt compelled to cry out, "Let me alone, take your hands off me." That is all I said to him until after the assault, after which I told him he would hear from me again. I recollected that he had to pretend to be a police officer. I turned towards him, and looking him full in the face, inquired of him whether he was a police officer. He very distinctly told me it was none of my business. But as there seemed to be a difference of opinion in regard to that, I did not press the question. But to return to our Baltimore friends, they came to hear the trial. The courtroom was crowded. I had no idea of the sensation it would create, and nothing short of the question like this would justify me, in my own opinion, in making such a public spectacle of myself, and certainly requires a great degree of moral courage to act in this matter. It is no trifling subject. Whether successful or unsuccessful, we must stand firm to the last. I know there is danger in the countries, but some kind of Father who has protected me until this time, I believe will continue to do so unto the end. I feel that it is good and glorious effort in which I am engaged. Our soldiers went forth with sword and bayonet to contend for right and justice. We could not do that, but we contend against outrage and oppression wherever we find it, firmly standing and giving away from the rudest shocks. Yours truly, E. Garrison Jackson.
The last letter we wanted to read tonight was found just recently. In 1872, after the death of her brother, John Garrison, here in Concord, Ellen applied to be a teacher with the Friends Freedmen's Association in Philadelphia. She was hired and sent to North Carolina, where she served more than 5 schools in almost a decade of teaching in the state. As with other marginalized stories of the American past, Ellen's story is found layer by layer through the historical record. This is a recent discovery by the Robbins House and a letter Ellen wrote discussing her time in North Carolina. In addition to her teaching, she also visited families and members of the Black community in Hillsborough, where she was a teacher. This is the first time that this letter has been read in more than 150 years publicly. Hillsborough, North Carolina, January 21st, 1873. I felt obliged to visit the applicants, for they have an idea that I will help all. I have assisted 6 families with food, clothing, and fuel, beside clothing individuals. Last Saturday, I went to see a sick man. He sat in a forlorn room, a crutch by his side, and a big of rag wrapped around his shoulders. Just before I called, he said he did not know what to do, but he remembered that the Lord would not forsake those who put their trust in him. I had the pleasure of wrapping a blanket around the old man's shoulders and gave him provisions sufficient to last till could call again. thus proving that the Lord will provide. I gave one of the new calico dresses to a poor, hardworking girl who is very good to her parents, brothers, and sisters, doing what in her power to help them. Another dress was intended for a woman with 5 children to provide for her. I've just sent out a dress to an old woman who said she sent to that to help weigh off their last winter to ask for a dress, and she did not get it. I think the most of the sickness is occasioned by the want of proper food, or of one little girl quaintly expressed it, "Father would be up by now if he had only had attention. He didn't have anything to eat." I feel about the poor as I do about the school. There is more than I can possibly do, and after I've done all and filled the whole day, there is so much left undone that I feel as if I had almost done nothing. Ellen G. Jackson.
I'm Michael Williams, and we close with a poem by Sam Williams, Stand Up for Ellen. If there was a shot heard round the world, Concordians, today what would that sound be? Can Ellen Garrison become that iconic symbol and be the example of American liberty? Can the freedom fighters of the past still be alive in you and me? Can the social doors of our collective humanity be broken down and set people free? Ellen was buried in an unmarked grave. She taught education as an underground cause. She was defiant during the white-only days. She challenged standards. She challenged laws. Ellen Garrison Jackson Clark was the predecessor to Rosa Parks. She was born in Concord at the Robbins House. She taught African freedom on every route. Ellen was on a mission to elevate her race, an abolitionist of abolitionists whose vision was strong. She traveled the country. She moved with grace by tapping into energies of the old slave songs. Slavery and segregation were the conditions she fought because it mangled and strangled black people with fear. As an educator, she brought this struggle into light. Her mission for freedom was simple, was clear. As the granddaughter of a man enslaved, her inherited rights were to do this work. At the age of 12, she walked in the Concord parade. She was viewed with scorn, but needed to be heard. A good story is only compelling if it touches the mind. Do you remember the footprints left behind in the sand? Great teachers should awaken and inspire the blind. It is not what they say, it is how they take stand. Who are the black educators that we remember the most? Woodson, Roger, Booker T, Du Bois? Men are always selected for this sacred post, but what about Ellen? What about her voice? Social justice is a tool to correct wrongs that were done. Ellen Garrison was an advocate for civil rights. Her earliest activism began in this very town. Can you still hear her voice? Can you still see her fight? Why are people silent during the real cause? Why are these connections and relationships so rare? Why is it hard to see the truth beyond the fraud? If we stand up for Ellen, we can't sit down in fear. If we stand up for Ellen, we must stand up for the truth in education, community, and preparing the youth. If we stand up for Ellen, we must cut the lies loose by engaging in solidarity as an action of proof. If we stand up for Ellen, we must not be afraid of the judgment, opinions, and scrutiny of the mob. By standing up for Ellen, we demonstrate that we are brave so that the next generation is not socially robbed. Ellen Garrison Jackson Clark, April 14th, 1823, December 21st, 1892. May the people gathered say, Amen.
Hello, my name is Nikki Turpin, and I am the current president of the Robbins House. My lineage is pretty long. Dr. Maria Madsen started this position. Dr. Rob Monroe was also in that position, and now I stand here. And so I'm very proud of the space and shoes I somewhat fill as I lead the Robbins House to its next venture. Before we depart to have cake, because it's not a party without cake, I want to have a few words with you. Revolutions happen every day, and in a few weeks we will celebrate one that occurred 250 years ago. The irony is that while we are preparing to celebrate that marker of time, based on the idea that people wanted to be free from monarchy rule, we sit pretty stagnantly right now, watching as this democracy that was fought for 250 years ago gets ripped away from us. As many people will joyously celebrate this independence, it kind of falls flat for me. And I feel very much like Frederick Douglass did when he was asked to speak for 4th of July. Some Americans just want to celebrate the past, and they want to turn a blind eye to the problems of the present, which may mean we're in the danger of being unable to celebrate a future. On top of that, this layer of Yom HaShoah, which is observed on April 23rd, it's a Jewish holiday that takes a moment to recognize the Holocaust and those who did not make it. It's a moment to self-reflect. It's a moment to think about what would you have done. It's a moment to think about what was lost. And to remember that it should never happen again. We're living right now in a time where you should be asking, what will I do? What would you have done during the Holocaust? What would you have done during the enslavement of others? I know the answer. You would be doing exactly what you're doing right now, because we are all living in our own version right now. Are you waiting for someone to fix this version? Fix the problem? Thinking it just can't get any worse? Surely someone's going to stop it? I need you all to grab a mirror. That somebody's you. I need you to ask yourself, what are you actually waiting for? Because the time is now. There will be no Christmas addicts to slip in front of a bullet for you. And the only symbol right now that we have to show us what we need to do is a young man by the name of Kamar Garcia. He's a human being that is now a symbol of what they will take from us anywhere, anyone, and never return, since no one will stop them. The days of waiting for others to be our saviors are over, and the 92% did their job. It's time for us to be our own versions of John Brown. We all know what needs to happen next, because one protest is not enough. Not shopping at Target is not enough. Not buying or selling your Tesla, it's not enough. Standing in this space, I can't help but to think of Moses and how he gave up his privilege in order to free those who were enslaved. It is time for you, all of us, to champion and claim what we fought for, what we believe in, which is the reality that freedom should be for all. This will take a revolutionary movement and a sacrifice. This week, Robbins House, like many museums that tell the stories of Black and brown Americans, was notified that, to quote this official government conversation and communication, your grant is unfortunately no longer consistent with the agency's priorities and no longer serves the interests of the United States and the IMLS program. IMLS is repurposing its funding allocations in a new direction and in furtherance of the president's agenda. But I want you to think about those words and what they mean. What this country is now saying is it's not important. Places like the Robbins House are not important. In the numbers, that means that after this fall, the Robbins House may no longer be able to open or exist. In values, it means that the sacrifices and injustices of Black American heroes will no longer align with the narrative of exceptional white greatness. And that is the goal. For a museum in such a revolutionary space to be often overlooked or overthought or an afterthought within conversation is no longer allowed or granted a seat at any table. This administration has declared that Black Americans and those who support them will not be allowed in the House, and it's now trying to destroy the one we helped create to ensure that we always had a home. Being an educated Black woman in any time period is a revolutionary act, and that brings us to today, a day of celebration and love for Ellen Garrison. We honor her memory and the work that she did to lift and support the community she lived in and traveled to, and that the hopes that she could give more of herself in every moment to better mankind and humanity. I'm pretty cool sometimes, and I have a really fun group chat, which I consider a group of historical family members, and a few of them are in this room. And one of them, Tammy, stated, 2 revolutions have happened, American and transnational, but it's also civil disobedience, education reformation, environmental movement. It's the natural home to whatever is next. And she was talking about Concord. Within the last few years, Concord has rallied to stand up for Ellen, and it's now time for us to rally and stand up for ourselves. Thank you so much. Have a great evening. Join us for cake.
So we're having a reception at the Wright Tavern, which is the red building on the Rotary, and we're having Ellen Garrison birthday cake. So we'd like to invite everyone to come back to the Wright Tavern to celebrate Ellen and have some birthday cake. And before we do that, I just wanted to thank all of the performers, Emma Robinson, James for accompanying her, the Concord Carlisle Orchestra, Principal Cameron, and the students at the Ellen Garrison Middle School. We so appreciate the partnership, the friendships that we have made at the museum in the last several years, and we look forward to celebrating another Ellen Garrison Day next year. Thank you, and please come eat cake.